Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. And today we have the new featured location, Lamentis-1. And when this location reveals, each player is going to draw 3 cards, and then they are going to destroy their deck. So this is going to make some archetypes absolutely terrible to play while this is featured, and others it's going to make them much more consistent than they would have otherwise. So today I'm going to be covering my top 5 deck recommendations to try out today. There will be a couple of bonus decks so that I can cover multiple options, because I think today is going to be very flexible to build around, as long as you avoid a couple of particular cards. Now, starting out, I want to kind of highlight a couple of cards that are going to be really good today. So DeathPool. A lot of times DeathPool can be an absolute game-breaking card if you can have him in your starting hand. Well, today is going to be your day. You can have him almost every time by turn 3 as long as Lamentis-1 turns up, and you're going to find yourself with a lot more upside because of it. Maximus. Typically, Maximus has the downside of his on reveal, your opponent draws 2 cards. But while this is featured, we're not really going to have to worry about that, because they won't have any cards to draw into. Maximus can be used anytime from turn 3 on, as long as Lamentis-1 is on the board. And the last time that a location really heavily helped Leech out, it was not a very fun location. But today, I think Leech is going to have a decent amount of upside, because they are going to have all of their cards in their hand. Leech is going to hit every single one of their cards, so if you can drop this before the opponent does, they're not going to be able to do their counter plays or big power push on that last turn unless it just has raw power. And so I think Leech is going to be a very good pick for today. And then America Chavez is going to be phenomenal today. We're never going to actually draw her, but she's going to serve as a deck thinner. If you throw her into a deck, you're essentially drawing out of a pool of 11 cards instead of 12. Because you're never going to, as long as Lamentis-1 turns up, you're never going to draw her on turn 6. You're never going to draw a card on turn 6. And so she's essentially just going to thin your deck so that you can get your higher priority combos out much easier. And then we have Thor. Thor will shuffle a Mjolnir into the list. He's a 3-cost, 4-power card that, if you play Mjolnir, becomes a 3-cost, 10-power. And if you play this on 3 after your deck has been destroyed, you're guaranteed to draw into Mjolnir that very next turn. So you no longer need to rely on Jane Foster to get the upside from your Thor. And so then if you build around this with an Odin deck, you can get a lot of upside out of your Thor. And as long as you protect that lane, you just have to find your win condition in one additional location. And then lastly, Scorpion. Scorpion's going to be great if you drop this as soon as the opponent draws into all of their cards from Lamentis. This is going to reduce the power of every single one of the cards that the opponent can potentially play from here on out. And then if you happen to drop this into a Camartage, that's going to be -2, and then you can just really start snowballing this and make it really hard for the opponent to get much advantage. Typically, if you hit 4 cards, this is a 6-power swing onto the board. But if you hit close to 7 cards, that's going to be 9 power push that you can do on turn 2 if Lamentis-1 has already turned up. Most of the time, it's going to end in about a 7 or 8 power swing that you're going to be able to hit with this card. And so just a lot of upside from Scorpion for today. And so what decks are going to be good today? I'm going to breeze through the Pool 1 and Pool 2. They are Odin on reveal decks. They're very standard, straightforward Odin on reveal decks. Only in Pool 1, I added in Chavez, because we want to more reliably draw into our game winners in our Gamora and our Odin, our Jessica Jones on 4 into a Gamora and an Odin, or White Tiger into Odin to push power into multiple lanes. We just have a really big power push that we can drop on 5 and 6 very consistently by being able to thin our deck down to 11 with Chavez and then draw into 3 of the additional resources with Lamentis. And the next list that I have is a Pool 2 Odin on reveal. Now, there might be better Pool 1 and Pool 2 or Series 1, Series 2 decks, but I think this is going to be very consistent for us for today. And so this list is going to run our counter card in Shang-Chi, so if the opponent does a really strong push, you can destroy their card on that last turn. It also runs a Nova and a Killmonger as a way to buff up all of the rest of your cards, and if you find that your opponent is running something like a Khazar Zoo, or anything that runs very many 1-cost cards, even just a Sunspot, Killmonger is going to give you insane value, and I think it's very worthwhile to run along with Shang-Chi once you unlock them for this featured location. And Series 3 is where this starts getting really crazy really quickly. So the first deck that I recommend trying out for this featured location is a Debris deck. I love a good clog, send 'em crap style deck, and you'll notice that this one does not run Hazmat. If you have a Luke Cage, then you can run the Hazmat version to negatively impact all of the opponent's cards, but the goal of this list and the idea behind it is that you're going to very consistently draw into your Debris by turn 3, and then you can drop that. If you have Absorbing Man, you can slot this in instead of maybe a Wolfsbane. That way you can have Debris into a turn 4 Debris as well to really clog up the opponent's board. You have your Viper, your Green Goblin, you even have a Polaris to pull some of those resources over into that lane to further cap it out. You have a Cosmo to protect yourselves from any kind of big counterplay, maybe even you can counter a Hazmat play. And then you have your late game power pushes in your Maximus, your Wolfsbane, your Doc Ock, because we're never going to see Chavez as long as Lamentis-1 appears. And so I think Doc Ock is going to be a really strong card today in being able to pull the limited resources that the opponent has, and then we can just kind of play in those other locations once we drain them of their critical cards. And so I think this is going to be a very strong list today. I'm really excited. This is going to be one of the first lists that I try out because I think it's going to be very consistent at clogging up the opponent's board. Now, if they are running destruction tools, Debris becomes much less impactful, and so we have to be on the lookout for a lot of Death Waves or Deadpool decks, which is going to be our next list. The next list is a Deadpool deck. If Lamentis-1 turns up, you're going to draw into your Deadpool much more often early on. And then you can combine that with either a Forge, a Hulkbuster. We don't run Forge in this list, but you could sub out Forge for Hulkbuster. We're going to be able to merge our Deadpool together. We're going to have our Nova, our destruction triggers much more often and much more consistently. We also have Taskmaster as a way to push that additional power once we drop a large Deadpool in the final turn. We could always drop a wave on 5 into a Deadpool and a Death, or a Death and a Taskmaster. If we can get a big Venom, then we could also Taskmaster the Venom and redrop another Deadpool. We just have a lot of flexibility with this list, and being able to draw into those critical resources early gives us a lot better chance of hitting our high roll. And we all know that Deadpool decks have an insanely high roll, and so I think this list is going to be very good for today. And if you are deep into Series 4 and Series 5 where you spent all of your collector's tokens, I have a version that I'm going to test out with the cards that I have. And this one was created by a user named Kraken Null. And Kraken Null dubbed this one BastPool. It uses Bast as a way to give your Deadpool a boost early on. If you have both of those in hand, we have Death, which is not in Kraken Null's original list. I subbed it in. But if you don't have Death, you can drop Bast on turns 1, 2, or 3. And then once Lamentis turns up, you're going to be able to have a lot more of your resources. If you do have Death, you might be able to drop that alongside a Bast, because if the cards that get destroyed in each of the decks reduce Death's trigger or countdown timer, then we're going to be able to drop a free Death very early on. And so we're going to be able to do an early Death and then a Bast as well. And so we won't really have to worry about negatively impacting Death all that much. The rest of the list operates on running a very big high roll by being able to buff up our Deadpool quick, early, and consistently into using Shuri and Deadpool on 5 into either an Arnim Zola, or if you want to run a Taskmaster instead of one of the other cards, that's going to be a great addition. So if you don't have a Shuri or a Bast, you can sub a Taskmaster in. It just won't have as high of a high roll ceiling. But this one's, I think, is going to be really strong and give us a really big high roll as well. And then next up we have the deck list that has many names. I think the current one is Thundercats. It was created by Dunkoro to start the Black Panther season, and it is still very strong as long as there are not counter movement components or Cosmo counters to your big strong plays. But this one uses Thor, which is going to, of course, really consistently be able to trigger. We could do Thor or Electro into our big resources. We can use Electro to ramp into a Black Panther on 4, and then follow it up with an Arnim Zola on 5, and then Odin the Arnim Zola on 6 to buff up both of our Black Panthers even further. We have Leader to copy the opponent's big last turn play. Alright, so actually I had to update it. I took out Jubilee and I added in America Chavez, because Jubilee, of course, is not going to have anything to pull into, because if Lamentis-1 turns up, it's going to draw in 3 cards and then destroy the rest of our deck. And so I added in America Chavez. That's going to give us more consistency in drawing into our big ideal play lines, rather than a dead drop of Jubilee. But the rest of the deck runs very, very, very straightforward. It is a very fun and pretty flexible list to find your win condition in a lot of different ways. And we saved, I don't know if it's the best for last, but we saved a very strong one for the very end. This one's going to be an Agatha deck list. And along with America Chavez thinning your deck down to 11, Agatha is going to start in your opening hand, thinning your deck and the remaining card potential down to 10. Then we draw 3 cards initially off the bat, and then 1 additional card per turn. And so if Lamentis shows up on the 3rd location, then we're still going to be able to draw into and see just about our entire list. And we might run into hand size concerns potentially. Ooh. All right, so we took out Jubilee again, because Jubilee by turn 4 is very rarely going to be able to be used. And so we added in a Devil Dino. This list is typically going to make sure that our hand size is almost maxed out. Even if we end up using a Lady Sif to discard our Agatha on 3, we'll still have a very large hand size. And Devil Dino allows us to have a pretty good power push into another potential target for our Taskmaster. Otherwise, we're relying on Wave on 3 into Agatha on 4 to allow our Taskmaster play to be played on 5. This gives us an alternative path. We don't want any 6-cost cards in this list, because they would potentially interfere with Lady Sif discarding our Agatha. And then we also don't want anything that is a 2 or a 3 cost, because that could compete with Agatha in dropping our Wave or our Lady Sif on 3, and those are our priority drops. And so the rest of this list is pretty standard. It's a very counter-heavy deck list. We have our Shang-Chi and our Enchantress to take out any large cards that the opponent have. We have Sarah to reduce those down by 1, so then we could drop both Enchantress and Shang-Chi, or we could end up dropping our Ghost Rider and Shang-Chi on that final turn to give us a really big last turn power push that's going to be hard to compete with, especially with how consistently we're going to draw into those resources. This is going to be one to look out for, as well as any that are really high rolls, but I think this one could compete with those just by having the counterplay measures in place. But those are my top more than 5 deck recommendations for today. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys end up running or what you see on the ladder. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.